Welcome to Guardians of Innovation, Patent and Trademark Law.
Welcome back to Guardians of Innovation, Patent and Trademark Law with registered patent attorney Vincent LoTempio. I'm Evan Mack, and back with us today is Andrew Lees, the founder of Stoke Ventures, a product development firm that helps entrepreneurs take their inventions from the idea to income. In our last episode, we talked about how to protect and build your product. Today, we're going to go a little bit deeper into what it really takes to turn the protected invention into a business. This is Patent to Profits, turning a predicted idea into scalable business. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Nice, thanks. Yeah, I don't know who's supposed to say hello first, but yeah, Andrew,
I
again,
know it's weird when it comes to that.
I want to just thank Andrew again for coming on, and I really appreciate it. I think this will help a lot of inventors and point them in the right direction.
I hope so. Yeah, thank you so much.
Andrew, I wanted to ask before the last episode, but I guess we can start it off the bat because it was on my mind right before we got finished. Like, how do you know? How do you talk to somebody that just has a cool idea or something that they really should pursue? You know what I mean? Because I think everybody thinks they have an epiphany or something that hasn't been done before. But how do you kind of decipher that? You're like, oh, you actually really might be onto something.
Yeah, that may be the $1 million question, right? Is you're right. I think, and I'm biased because I do product development. You know, I'm in this space, but I think that everybody has at least one idea that they feel they could take to market, that they feel could be successful. At least everyone on the planet, and probably 10. You know, so especially now with Shark Tank, how popular that is, I feel like that has really exploded people's perception of what could be done. And, you know, like the barrier to entry feels a little bit lower because it's a little more accessible. They see kind of that it's possible to take your like crazy idea and get it to market. So, but it's really hard to know. So to answer your question though, it's really hard to know what's not really a great idea and what could, be a super successful. And, for everybody, the definition of success is a little different. Could be just a nice, stable 6-figure business. That's great. Some people are looking for a lot more. We had a fishing product that was actually my first client. It's called Catch a Lure, and it helps you get your lures out of, like, for fly fishing or even conventional fishing, especially for fly fishing. And I don't fly fish, but my client does. And so he kept getting his lures or his flies stuck in trees and bushes and like on a back cast or something. And so he came up with this thing that would help you get it out. So he made this like very crude prototype. Looked actually a little phallic, honestly. Like the first thing that he brought to me, I was like, I don't know if we can't sell that, man. We can't do it.
We're pushing it a little bit. We can't.
I hope Dave is listening to this at some point because he'll get a laugh out of that. But so the idea was that it helped you get the lure out of the tree. So I'm like, this guy, I don't know if is this a good product? Is this sort of garage hack prototype looks a little questionable, and I didn't necessarily trust it. I didn't feel like this was going to really go anywhere, but it was my first client. I needed some business. I'm like, cool, let's go for it. Turns out it's needed by, like, it's a problem that every single, especially fly fishermen, they all have it. Almost, I actually ended up going years later. I went to a trade show with him, and everybody who came up to the booth was like, "This is amazing. This happens to me all the time." I'm like, I don't fish. I didn't get it. Yeah, it was so cool. It was a cool like circle moment. So originally I didn't think it was a great idea. Turns out actually I just didn't fully understand the market to begin with. But there are definitely, so I try not to judge, but there definitely are some things that are just like, after we do research, and that's the first part of what we do is we'll talk with our, with the people who reach out to us. We'll talk through their product. We'll kind of get a feel for what they're looking for out of it, what their target market is, see if they really understand their target market. And, and sometimes it just seems a little too goofy it's like, nah, I don't know. your price point's going to have to be way too high, and your market is never going to pay that. Or, you're what you're developing is like a Me Too product where there's 100 other versions and you're just making one little change. And I think it's a little too saturated. Like maybe you could be successful, but it's gonna be really difficult. So those are the kind of things that we'll look at early on to see if
Do you have like a checklist of things? I know I did a blog post years ago with this company called Lambert and Lambert, and they had their own little checklist of things like that. How much does it weigh? How do you ship it? What's your price point? It's usually 1 to 5. So for every dollar that you spent to manufacture, you got to be able to sell it for 5 times that amount. And you go through like a checklist. But then again, like you said, you have a feel for it. But if I would have came to your office in 1976 and I said I had this great idea, it's a pet rock. You don't have to
yeah,
flush it. You don't have to get somebody to babysit it when you go on vacation. It's gonna be the best pet you ever had. I'm sure you'd have thrown them out of your office and said they were crazy, and they would have went out and sold 8 million of them. So,
yeah,
I had an attorney that was my mentor, where I spoke with him when I first started. His name was Joe Gastel, and he said, I don't try to encourage inventors. I don't try to discourage them. I don't know if they're going to be the Bezos out of his garage that's going to be a multi-billionaire, or
Right.
the person that's never going to be successful.
yeah,
So
yep,
I try not to be, it's almost, and I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember 45 records. So the 45 would have two sides, just one song on each side. And they'd always, they put it out thinking that the A side was going to be the hit and the B side ends up being the hit. So I guess in me, you just
yeah.
never know what's going to be successful or not. But there are certain parameters that it's going to weigh 750,000 pounds. We can't ship it to everybody. It's just you're never going to be able to sell this thing.
Vincent, what about generating that revenue? An inventor has a patent, there's trademarks in place. What are their real options into turning that into money? Because eventually, I think they want to, make some bread off of all this.
Well, I don't know if you want to answer that one, Andrew, but the inventor has to be able to do three things: manufacture, market, and distribute. And whether
Okay.
he does it or license it out to another company that's going to do it, and sell your idea to somebody else. And that's what everybody wants to do. That's the holy grail. Sit in home and just collect my checks every month and not have to do it myself, and let
Right.
somebody else do it. And I try to explain to them, look, it's not like a lottery ticket where it's just going to sell itself. You're still going to
Yeah.
have to do all these tests. And Andrew, you can go with that one. You can go.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not in my head because yeah, licensing. We could have 5 episodes on licensing alone, probably. But yeah, I think where you were going is it's not a slam. Licensing is not a slam dunk,
Okay.
and a lot of people think that. I think, and feel free to jump in, Vincent. But in my experience, uh, inventors, people come up with an idea, and maybe it's an amazing idea. Like maybe it's genuinely a really great idea that could do really well, but they want to cash out early. They don't want to do all the work, and they just want to license it. They want to maybe patent it, maybe not even develop it at all. They just want to have somebody else figure all that stuff out. The problem is that companies that they want to license it to, typically larger companies, they don't want to take the risk. They have this flywheel of revenue that's just cruising along, and they're not just going to stop for, oh yeah, that looks, even if, like, I've had products that I've seen that we've developed or that we've been involved with in some way that have been pitched to companies and to larger companies. They're awesome products, and they're like, yeah, we see it, this is great, but we're not going to interrupt our whole process for it. And so we're just, it just doesn't work out. And so I
Yeah,
think a lot.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but
I
that
know.
happened to me early in my career. We had this great idea. We brought it to a local company that was publicly traded, and we went right up to the president of the company, and then they're like, okay, give us 80,000 of them by next Tuesday, and we'll do a test in Mexico and in France. And I remember it because I'm like, why Mexico and France? I don't know why they picked those two countries, but it just stuck in my mind. And I got the little old lady with the new milk bottle, and that's not what the invention was. But and she's like, I can't produce 80,000. I want you to produce them. And they're like, no, we're not going to change our whole factory and start producing these things that are different than they're producing. We like the
Mhm.
idea, and if those 80,000 sell, we'll do 1 million the next run. Then we'll do 10 million if it runs. Yeah, so that was like an eye-opening experience for me. Hey, Andrew, let me ask you one thing.
Yeah.
This is going through my mind. You're saying they think they have a great idea, and no one's ever come to me and said, I have this terrible idea. No one's going to like it, right? Everybody's in love with their idea.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of these development companies out there, and I want to name anyone like Davison, where they have a very, very low success rate of actually making money. In fact, Davison was court ordered to put on their website how many people actually made money versus how many people they got money from. And it was
Yep.
like 500,000 people they got money from, and like 15 people made money. I
Yep.
mean, so the inventors are so in love with their idea that they go to these product development companies, and they just tell them it's the best idea no matter what, no matter how bad it is.
Yep.
They tell them it's a great idea, and then they kind of churn money out of them. How do you differ from them, and what experience have you had with those type of issues with product development companies?
Yeah, 100%. And that plays in the licensing thing too, and the relatively low success rate. It's you don't just easily cash out, and if you do, there's other companies that are, yeah, I don't want to name names necessarily, but there are companies that will teach you how to license products, and some of those teachers themselves they've been successful, but they've had to license like hundreds and hundreds of products to find one that would actually give them the kind of wealth that they were seeking, the kind of success that they were seeking. Like some of these, you might get a deal, it's like $50,000 and that's it. And then maybe you get a few pennies on royalty for the rest of your life, but it like doesn't actually add up too much. You find out that you have to do this over and over and over and over and over again in order, create any kind of like real life-changing wealth. So I just kind of wanted to mention that ties into the Davison thing, and I've seen that disclaimer. It's pretty wild, and if you read through it, it's pretty depressing, the numbers. But that's why our model is not about licensing. It's about helping people to build a business around their product. If more people thought about their invested, they've got this great idea, and if it's so great, invest in it, double
Okay.
down on it, take it as far as you can, because the further you take it, the more likely that you will be to be successful. And part of that is control. If you try and license it, you come up with something, you leave it in somebody else's hands. Even if it's amazing, they still have to make it. They have to work out any bugs, if there are any. They have to sell it. You're totally reliant on all the work that they're doing, and they may not do it. They may not do it the right way. So if you're controlling all that, though, then you can adjust things, you can pivot. Maybe hopefully most of the inventors that come to us, the ultimate goal is to see a product through to market and be successful with it, even if it isn't exactly the way that they originally envisioned. So if you're willing to be flexible, that increases, and you can see it through and invest in it, that increases your chances of success tremendously. And we've seen that with our own products, that like the idea I first had for the product, it's not how it ended up. And if I had been so laser focused on that, or if I had tried to license that as it was, it just wouldn't have been successful. But for me, it's not about like I have this exact thing that needs to get out to market exactly that way. Being flexible has made it an enormous difference, and has, if you're just focused on like, I'm going to be successful with something, and you stick with it, you're actually pretty likely to be successful.
Yeah, I found that with successful inventors. I have inventors that make $2, $3 million a month, and I asked them basically what advice would you give to inventors? And they're like, you have to be all in. It's not half ass. You have to be all in. And what did your mother tell you when you were a little kid? If you want it done right, do it yourself. Don't expect somebody else that's gonna, have the drive and the want to push this through, especially these big companies that are just getting money. They're just churning money in. They're making more money getting it from the investors than they are making products and getting profits from them.
Vince, can you explain though how licensing agreements work, like, and what inventors should be cautious about while they're getting into them?
Well, a lot of times it starts with the NDA, and these their NDAs is just a deterrent from someone stealing your idea, but usually they're really one-sided. I said, when I was a little boy, I always go back to what my mother says, don't make a federal case out of this, certain sayings that she would have. But if
Yeah.
we wanted to make a big decision in our life, I could recall sitting down at the kitchen table. We had this round kitchen table, and mom, I really want to do this. And we would put the pad in front of us and draw a line down the middle and put the pluses on one side and the minuses on the other. And we said, okay, if the pluses outweigh the minuses, we'll do it. And when you're going in to make your licensing agreement, and what's your plus on your side? Well, I have the idea. Well, what's the pluses on their side? Well, they have the money, the manufacturing, the marketing, the distribution channels. They have everything. So I mean, unless you're George Foreman and you can say I'm going to put my name on it, that's I'm sure I don't know if he invented the fryer or not, but you're an inventor. You want to get some of those pluses over to your side, and working with a guy like Andrew, you got that done. We've got that figured out. This is how we're going to manufacture it. This is the cost. This is the transportation fees. This is what it costs to store it. How we're going to, what does it cost to develop? What are the materials? So when you go in to make that licensing agreement, you got to have some of those pluses on your side more than just your idea. And I always say ideas don't sell themselves. People sell the ideas, so you have to be able to sell it. And, if you watch Shark Tank that we talked about earlier, those are the type of questions that you're going to get from the guy that's going to do the licensing agreement. So you better have your homework done before you walk in that door. And it's not just, oh, I have this on a napkin, this idea of how it's going to work.
Right.
It just doesn't work that way.
To close things out, gentlemen, what advice would you guys give someone who has a protected invention but no clear plan for how to grow it or monetize it? What would you say to them if they really just don't know what to do?
I'll let Andrew take this one.
So yeah, I mean, the first thing is start with research. Figure out what are the comparative products, and how is yours, like, are you addressing a large enough market that you feel like there's plenty of potential for? Is your product, does it differentiate itself enough from the competitive products? You also have to think about competing against DIY stuff. Like sometimes a product makes a task easier, better for somebody, but they've already got some DIY hack that they're doing, and that's basically free, and you have to compete against that. So you have to think about all those things. And if you have something that's different enough and better enough, it doesn't have to be like the next multi-billion-dollar product. It doesn't have to be this insane something that differentiates by a mile. It just has to be differentiated enough that people are going to want to pay for yours over somebody else. So figure that out first, and then think about a patent search, talking with us to develop, or a product development firm who can help you through this process, plan out the design, the engineering, the prototyping, a pre-launch, so that we can think all the way through marketing, and then talk with Vincent about protecting it along the way, and having that hand in hand relationship between a designer, engineer, and patent attorney I think is super important too.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and thank you for your insight.
Hey, thank you for hosting, and Andrew, thank you for coming on. We should do this again. I'm thinking we could come up with so many different topics to talk about that can help inventors. And if there's any inventors out there that have some specific questions for us, you can ask those in the comments, and perhaps we could help you.
Thank you so much, Vincent, for having me. Thanks, Evan. But it's been a real pleasure. You guys are awesome, and love working with you both. So thank you so much.
This has been awesome, guys. Thank you for joining us on Guardians of Innovation. Protecting your idea is just the beginning. What you do next determines whether it becomes a business, a licensing success, or a missed opportunity. To work with Vincent, visit LoTempiolaw.com, and to explore product launch and strategy with Andrew Lees, visit StokeVentures.com. Do not forget to like and subscribe. Leave those comments. Ask those questions. They can answer anything that you want, and I think it can be very helpful. Do not hesitate, and thank you so much because they're here to help.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.